What's going on, guys? Today I'm bringing you another video, the beginning after the end, Arthur Leywin. Man, if y'all don't know who this person is, I'm gonna tell you who this guy is. He is him. He is Hemi Butler. He's that nigga. There's nothing else I can really say. So basically what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go through the overview, read a couple of abilities, state a couple relationships, and at the end, shit, why not discuss a couple of his battles? Let's get into it. Arthur Leywin is the main protagonist of the beginning after the end. In his previous life, he was a king named Gray, before he was reincarnated into a new world on the continent of Dicathan. In his former world, he lived as someone who stood on the top of his country in terms of combat and authority until he was assassinated one day. However, after dying as King Gray, he reawoke as Arthur Leywin and as if he wasn't assassinated. After being reincarnated into the Leywin family, Gray decided that, unlike his previous life, he would live this life to the fullest to be loved and surrounded by friends and family that he was void of in the past. As King Gray, Arthur had pale, short, blonde hair. He had a large build from extensive training and was seen wearing a pale yellow robe or tunic with long white pants that end just before his calves, which were paired with brown sandals. During times of war, Gray is seen in a full-body armor suit. Born as Arthur Leywin, Arthur had short auburn hair and a large, bright azure eyes. He had a small, round face and was generally dressed in solid color fabrics by his mother. As he grew older, Arthur's hair started to grow longer, with short bangs sweeping across his forehead. At the age of 8, Arthur had grown taller and his hair had grown significantly, extending just past his ears, above his neck. Once he had returned from Eleanor to Cyrus City in Sapin, Arthur had a haircut, which left him with a short hair and short bangs that swept across his forehead. He often wore solid colored shorts that matched with a button-up shirt. His shoes were typically brown and he opted to wear long socks, although this is only to cover the Tapas and Capogotcha page comment. Arthur had a haircut, which left him with the short hair and the long bangs that swept across his forehead. He often wore solid colored shorts that are matched with a button-up shirt. His shoes were typically brown and he opted to wear long socks, although this is only the cover of the comics. In the comics themselves, he will often wear a white button-up shirt with a string necktie and gray shorts with brown suspenders. As for footwear, he will wear black dress shoes, likely without socks. As an adventurer, Arthur wears a black turtleneck long sleeve, which are paired with black pants and boots. He wears a loose, pale, ugly shirt beneath a hooded, navy blue jacket with gray markings across the sleeves. His face is covered with a white full mask with blue half note printed along his left eye hole. Arthur wears black spiked ouches, skin fingerless gloves with 3 green single-use healing spell gems embedded on the knuckles. Along with his gloves, he also wears a silver ring on his ring finger, which matches with his mother's red jewelry ring. He also carries a dark olive hiker's backpack with a green sleeping bag rolled up beneath it, and his 2 swords strapped on both sides of his waist. Arthur Leywin as a teenager was above average height, taller than many adults around him, with auburn hair and azure eyes. He has a well-built body due to his continuous training. Using realm art, his eyes turn from their normal azure color to a lavender color. His hair, which turns from auburn to white, has orange tips and grows beyond his neck. Golden runes are also seen to spread throughout his entire body. In his previous life, Arthur lived by the name Gray. He lived on a dystopian futuristic Earth as an orphan in the orphanage alongside his childhood friend, Nico and Cecilia. Due to somewhat improvised nature of the orphanage he lived in, Gray and Nico resorted to criminal activities, predominantly burglary of the rich, to assist their orphanage's situation. He lived like this until one day he met a young Cecilia who had an attack and her key got out of control. Gray saved her, and from that day a friendship began that involved Nico, Gray, and Cecilia. Everything was at peace until one day Cecilia was almost kidnapped by a guy who referred to her as the Legacy. Although Gray was once again able to save her and Nico, when he returned to the orphanage, he found the headmaster dead. Following the death of his mother figure, who was the headmaster of the orphanage, Gray's mind was consumed by revenge, and in a bid to gain more power, enrolled in a cadet school. Despite his risk to become strong enough to take revenge, Gray enlisted in the military academy for this, and Nico and Cecilia followed him even though he tried to stop them. There, the group's relationship started well, but increasingly became more separated since Gray no longer met with them as much. He also gave up his personal feelings for Cecilia for the benefit of his friend Nico, who had the same feelings because of the training. There he met a woman named Vera, who became his teacher and a second mother figure for him. Increasingly more distance with Cecilia and Nico, Gray continued with his training to be king. The climax came when Cecilia was kidnapped by the organization that was looking for her and Nico, and Gray went out to look for her. Although Nico wanted to continue searching, Gray considered that if it was really the government that kidnapped her, there was nothing that could be done, which caused a big fight between them, and they separated. Months passed, and the contest began to elect the new king. Although Gray continued trying to contact Nico and trying to make peace could not be achieved. At the competition, he saw Cecilia, and relieved, he thought that Nico was just rambling. As the competition progresses, Cecilia and Gray advance and reach the final. Before the final, Nico escapes and explains where he was during the months he was missing. He explains that he was held captive and that they were using Cecilia. He also explains that Vera belongs to that organization and what their objective was. In addition, he explains that Vera alone chose him only because he was a naive orphan, and that he only plans to use him and presents him with some evidence. Added to that, he explains that he has a plan to rescue Cecilia. A dismayed Gray cannot believe any of this, believing that Nico was rambling and that his evidence was not very convincing before heading into combat for his final fight against Cecilia. Unfortunately for Gray, it turned out that everything Nico said was true, and as a consequence, everything ended in the death of Cecilia, who, seeking freedom and not being treated as a weapon, let Gray's sword kill her. Gray also saw Vera with the man she treated of kidnapping Cecilia when they were children. All of this caused his friendship with Nico to break and caused an external void in him. After that, he started a war that destroyed an entire country. Although it is not known what role he played, presumably Vera's and the ones behind the legacy. Throughout his later life as King Gray, he discarded any and all long-term attachments, seeing them as weaknesses that others could exploit, and in doing so hardened his heart and closed off his emotions. He lived like this until the moment of his death, and when he thought everything was over, he had been reincarnated as Arthur Leywin, at which point he decided to live a completely different life than the one he had lived in his previous world.